Hello, dear YouTube viewers. I hope you're doing well. Okay, let's start our video. I had always believed my wife and I balanced each other well. I was the quiet, calculating type. Someone who preferred structure, routine, and controlled environments, while she was warm, expressive, and effortlessly social. Her energy filled every room she entered, and for the longest time, that brightness was something I admired. But lately, things between us hadn't felt the same. Small misunderstandings turned into lingering silences. The stress from my work followed me home, and her growing frustration made our evenings heavier than either of us wanted to admit. We weren't fighting, but something unspoken had settled between us, creating a distance we both felt yet didn't fully acknowledge. At work, things were no easier. My job demanded precision and long hours, especially now when my department was running one of the biggest projects of the year. My colleagues respected me, but they knew I carried the weight of responsibilities that often stretched past office hours. The person who influenced my professional life the most was my boss, an authoritative, unpredictable man whom everyone admired but also feared. He was powerful, strict, and impossible to read, the kind of leader who appeared calm until the moment he wasn't. Lately, rumors had been circulating in the office about confidential issues he was dealing with, adding tension to an already pressured workplace. When the annual company celebration approached, a prestigious work event I never missed, my boss insisted that employees bring their partners to show unity and personal stability. Because of the tension between my wife and me, I hesitated at first, unsure if it would help or worsen things. But I eventually chose to invite her, hoping the evening might bridge the emotional gap between us. I imagined us reconnecting, enjoying the night together, maybe even reminding ourselves why we worked as a team. And yes, I also hoped bringing her would create a good impression on my boss, who valued professionalism both inside and outside the office. I had no idea the night would unfold in a way I could never have anticipated. The moment we arrived at the venue, it was clear this wasn't just another corporate gathering. The entire hall was transformed into something almost cinematic, chandeliers glowing like clusters of stars, soft jazz drifting through the air, and tables draped in shimmering fabrics. The company's logo was displayed across a massive screen, rotating slowly as if reminding everyone who they were celebrating tonight. Employees mingled in elegant suits and gowns, holding glasses of champagne while laughter echoed throughout the hall. It was the kind of environment where every detail mattered, and every glance felt like a silent evaluation. My wife looked breathtaking under the warm lights, her dress catching the glow in a way that made her impossible to overlook. For a moment, I forgot about the tension that had lingered at home. Watching her step confidently into the room made me feel both proud and strangely nervous. She had that natural charm, the kind that made heads turn without her trying. A few coworkers even whispered compliments to me, nudging me lightly, saying I was lucky. I smiled, though inside I was wondering whether this night would bring us closer or pull us further apart. As we moved through the crowd, my coworkers greeted us with friendly smiles and casual jokes. Introductions flowed smoothly. My wife observed everything, the conversations, the subtle office hierarchies, the polite stiffness that always came with corporate culture. She whispered playful comments to me, making me chuckle and easing my nerves a bit. Still, something felt off. My boss hadn't arrived yet, and usually he was the first one at events like this, positioned strategically to greet guests. Quiet murmurs spread among employees, rumors that he was delayed, that something urgent had come up. Though no one said it directly, I could sense uneasiness creeping into the atmosphere. A strange feeling tugged at me, a whisper of intuition that tonight would be anything but ordinary. The evening settled into a comfortable rhythm as drinks flowed and conversations deepened. My wife blended into the crowd effortlessly, her social confidence drawing people toward her. A few of my coworkers gathered around her, laughing at her witty remarks and complimenting her on everything from her dress to her personality. I watched from a short distance, smiling politely, though a small flicker of jealousy stirred inside me. It wasn't that I didn't trust her, it was the way people looked at her, like they were seeing a version of my life I wasn't sure I deserved. I found myself stepping closer to her more than once, gently placing a hand on her back, as if to remind everyone she was with me. Meanwhile, the conversations among the employees began shifting toward workplace politics. A small group huddled near the drinks table, whispering cautiously, their eyes darting around to ensure no one important overheard them. Rumors about my boss were flying everywhere, stories of his sudden bursts of anger, mistakes made under pressure, and a possible internal investigation involving mishandled company funds. No one seemed to know the truth, but the uncertainty itself created a tense atmosphere. Each new whisper added to the growing suspense about his eventual arrival. What state would he be in? What would he say or do tonight? As the night crept closer to midnight, the party's tone began to change. The music grew louder, people loosened up, and a handful of employees were clearly becoming drunk. Laughter was no longer soft and polite. It became messy, bold, and echoed off the walls. Glasses clinked, heels clicked across the dance floor, and the elegance of the evening subtly transformed into something less controlled. Yet despite the chaos, my attention kept drifting toward the entrance. Every few minutes, I found myself checking the doors, expecting them to swing open at any moment. I couldn't shake the strange, persistent feeling that something significant was about to happen. The sense of anticipation clung to me like a shadow, growing heavier as the clock inched toward midnight. Just as the clock approached midnight, something in the atmosphere shifted. The lively chatter began to fade, almost as if the room sensed what was coming. Then, without warning, the lights dimmed. The bright chandeliers softened to a low golden glow, and the music, once loud and energetic, quieted to a slow, tense hum. Conversations died mid-sentence. Glasses were lowered. Even the laughter from the drunkest guests abruptly halted. All eyes instinctively turned toward the entrance. A deep creaking sound filled the hall as the double doors swung open. The cold draft that followed sent a shiver through the room. For a moment, no one moved. It felt like the entire party was holding its breath. I felt my wife's hand slip into mine, her fingers tightening around my palm. Then he appeared. My boss stepped into the doorway, his silhouette framed by the hallway lights behind him. He didn't have the commanding presence he normally carried at company events. Instead, he looked strangely drained, his shoulders tense, his eyes unsettled, and a deep crease marking his forehead. His suit was slightly wrinkled, as if he had rushed or been pulled away from something urgent. There was a seriousness about him, a kind of heavy energy that immediately replaced the party's fading warmth. People exchanged confused glances. Whispered questions rustled through the crowd, but no one dared speak loudly. My boss scanned the room slowly, his expression unreadable, almost as if he was searching for someone. And that was when I noticed he was holding something tightly in his right hand. In his right hand, my boss held something wrapped tightly in a dark cloth. The fabric was thick enough that no one could immediately tell what was inside, but the shape suggested weight, something solid, something significant. His grip around it was firm, almost possessive, as if whatever he carried was too important or too dangerous to set down. From where I stood, the bundle looked slightly rectangular, though uneven, as if the item inside didn't quite fit its covering. The cloth itself appeared worn, with frayed edges that made it look out of place in such an elegant venue. A subtle gasp traveled through the crowd as people began to notice the object. No one dared speak openly, but whispers erupted in small, nervous pockets across the hall. Some speculated it was documents related to the rumored investigation. Others murmured about a possible emergency at the company's headquarters. A few people simply stared, wide-eyed, imagining the worst. The air grew thick with unease, and even the drunk guests sobered slightly as curiosity overtook their hazy minds. For me, a slow wave of dread crawled up my spine. I didn't know why. Nothing had happened yet, but every instinct in me screamed that whatever my boss carried had something to do with me. It was irrational, I told myself. It had to be. But the feeling only grew stronger as I watched him step further into the room, the cloth-wrapped object hanging ominously at his side. My boss didn't speak. Instead, he scanned the room with a stern, almost haunted expression. His gaze swept past groups of employees, lingering on a few faces, evaluating, measuring. People shifted uncomfortably under his scrutiny. I felt my wife glance up at me, sensing my tension even before I fully understood it myself. Then it happened. His eyes locked directly onto mine. For a moment, everything and everyone else disappeared. The background noise faded. The dim lights seemed to focus on just the two of us. My heart pounded hard enough for me to feel it in my throat. My wife's hand tightened on my arm, her silent question hanging in the air. My boss didn't look away. He stared at me with a look I couldn't interpret, part desperation, part warning. And that was when I knew, without doubt, whatever he was holding, it was meant for me. My boss began moving through the crowd with slow, deliberate steps. Each footfall echoed louder than the music, louder than the low murmurs, louder even than my own heartbeat, which was pounding so fiercely I felt it in my fingertips. Employees instinctively parted to make space for him, creating a narrow path that led straight toward where my wife and I stood. It didn't feel like a walk. It felt like an approach, a summoning. The cloth-wrapped object swung slightly at his side with every step, adding a subtle but unnerving rhythm to his movement. I could feel dozens of eyes shifting between him and me, silently questioning what connection existed that would make him zero in on me so intensely. I tried to swallow, but my throat was dry. My wife's hand still rested on my arm, but even that familiar touch felt distant compared to the weight settling in my chest. The lights seemed dimmer. The room felt smaller. Then, he stopped just a few feet in front of us. He lifted his head, his gaze locking onto mine with unsettling precision. Without breaking eye contact, he called my name, loudly, firmly, and with a tone that cut through the last remnants of music. The sound of it ricocheted through the hall. Conversations halted entirely. A few people actually gasped. Everyone waited for what would happen next, their faces frozen between curiosity and fear. My stomach tightened. Hearing my name spoken like that, almost like a command, made something inside me twist. I felt exposed, singled out, and suddenly aware that whatever was happening was far bigger than a workplace formality. My wife shifted closer to me, her fingers gripping mine with growing urgency. I felt her breath near my ear as she whispered, barely audible, "What's happening?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that my boss hadn't come here for anyone else, he'd come for me, and whatever was wrapped in that cloth was about to change everything. My boss finally lifted the cloth-wrapped object, bringing it into the soft glow of the chandelier above us. His hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of whatever he was about to reveal. The room fell so silent that I could hear the faint rustle of the fabric as he carefully pulled it away, layer by layer. Each fold dropped to the floor like a warning. Underneath the cloth was a thick folder, one sealed with red tape and marked with the company's confidential emblem. The edges were worn as if it had been handled roughly, maybe even hidden somewhere unsafe. The moment I saw it, a chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just paperwork. This was the kind of dossier people whispered about behind closed doors, the kind executives denied existed. My boss exhaled shakily and leaned in closer. "This," he said, his voice low yet urgent, "is a leaked internal file. It contains evidence, real evidence, that someone in this very room has been siphoning funds and manipulating our data systems." A few audible gasps rippled through the crowd, but he didn't turn toward them. His eyes stayed fixed on me. "I can't trust anyone else," he continued. "I don't know how deep this goes.
I don't know who's involved.
But I know you. I know your record, your integrity, your loyalty. You helped us once before, and I didn't forget that." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "You're the only person I can trust to handle this and deliver it to the board before they make the wrong decision." The implication hit me hard. Whoever leaked this could be standing just a few feet away. Whoever stole from the company might be watching my every move. The pressure was suffocating. My wife's reaction was immediate and raw. Her eyes widened, her face draining of color. She gripped my arm tightly, almost protectively, shaking her head slightly, as if silently pleading with me to refuse. "This is too much," she whispered, her voice trembling. Too dangerous. This isn't your responsibility. Why would he put you in the middle of something like this? I swallowed hard, caught between the intensity of my boss's expectation and the fear in my wife's eyes. I could feel the entire room waiting, watching, listening. And in that moment, one truth became painfully clear. Whether I wanted it or not, the night had just taken a turn from celebration to something far more perilous. For a moment, the weight of the folder in my boss's hands felt heavier than anything I had ever carried in my life. My thoughts spun wildly, tangled between duty, fear, and the instinct to protect the woman standing beside me. I had always taken pride in being dependable, someone who followed through, someone my colleagues and superiors could trust. But this was beyond loyalty. This was stepping into a battlefield I hadn't chosen, surrounded by people who were pretending to sip champagne while secretly calculating their next move. My pulse hammered against my ribs as 1,000 questions collided in my head. If I helped my boss, I risked becoming the target of whoever had been sabotaging the company. If I refused, I risked my career, my reputation, and everything I had worked so hard to build. And yet, another part of me whispered that none of that mattered as much as the person whose hand was trembling in mine. I felt her fingers tighten again, a silent plea to keep us safe. My wife leaned closer, her voice desperate and low. "Please," she whispered, her breath shaking. "Don't do this. We don't know who's involved, who might be watching. This isn't your fight." I could hear the fear beneath her words, not just for me, but for both of us. She had seen enough workplace politics to know how ugly it could get. What if this puts us in danger? What if he's dragging you into something you can't get out of? I looked at her, her eyes shining with worry, her confidence from earlier replaced by raw vulnerability. I felt torn in two. One part of me wanted to pull her close, tell my boss no, and walk out of the hall with her hand in mine. The other part, the one shaped by years of discipline and obligation, knew that turning away from this might cost me everything professionally. My boss must have sensed my hesitation because he stepped closer, lowering his voice into something sharper, more urgent. "This isn't a request," he said firmly. "This file needs to reach the board before sunrise. If it doesn't, the wrong people will win. And if they win, you and I both know what that means." The ultimatum hung between us like a blade. "Choose now," he added. "Your career and possibly your future depends on it." All eyes were on me. My wife's fear pulled one way. My boss's demand pulled the other. And standing there, caught in the crushing silence of a midnight party, I realized that whichever choice I made, there would be no turning back. I took a slow, deliberate breath and stepped forward. The room seemed to hold its collective breath with me. Every eye was fixed on my hands as I reached out and accepted the folder from my boss. It felt heavier than it looked, as if the weight inside carried not just paper, but responsibility, trust, and danger. The moment my fingers closed around it, a ripple ran through the crowd. A sharp gasp escaped someone near the drinks table. Conversations froze mid-word, champagne glasses hovered in midair, and the hum of the party seemed to vanish entirely. My wife's hand found mine again, this time gripping tightly, as if anchoring me in reality. Her eyes, wide with fear, darted between me and the boss. I could see the pride hidden behind her worry. She knew I had made a choice, taken responsibility, and faced the unknown head-on. She leaned slightly into me, whispering, "Be careful," and I nodded, feeling the weight of both her trust and her concern. Her presence made the risk feel both heavier and more bearable. My boss took a step back, his expression serious, the urgency in his eyes intensifying. He leaned in just enough for me to hear him clearly over the now tense silence of the room. "There's a safe house 2 blocks from here," he said, voice low but sharp. "Go there immediately. Inside the folder are documents that must be delivered directly to the board. You cannot open it here, and you cannot show it to anyone in this room. If you hesitate, someone else will take it first, and we lose everything." He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. "The person waiting for you knows your face. Do exactly as I say. Time is short, and failure isn't an option." I nodded again, feeling the gravity of the situation press against my chest. The party, the lights, the murmurs, they all faded into the background. There was only the folder, my wife's steady presence beside me, and the task ahead. Whatever awaited at that safe house, whatever danger lurked in the shadows, I had made my decision. I had no choice but to act, and to act fast. The moment I stepped back from the boss and the folder, the air in the room shifted. Conversations that had been suspended moments ago slowly resumed, but now they carried a different tone. Whispers ricocheted through the crowd, half curiosity, half speculation. Some guests shook their heads, clearly concerned, murmuring about what had just happened. "Did you see that? He just took it." Others leaned in closer, admiring the decisiveness, the courage, or perhaps the audacity of what they had witnessed. A few people discreetly approached me, leaning in with hushed warnings. "Be careful," one said, voice barely above a whisper, glancing nervously at my boss. Another offered a tight smile of approval, patting my shoulder before quickly retreating. The attention was unnerving. I wasn't used to being the center of such tension, and I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me, assessing my next move. I turned to my wife and whispered, "We need to go." Her hand immediately found mine, and she nodded, understanding the urgency without needing more explanation. We moved quickly through the crowd, sidestepping lingering guests whose eyes lingered a little too long. Her presence beside me was grounding, her warmth a small shield against the rising anxiety. By the time we reached the car, the adrenaline from the confrontation had left me both shaken and alert. She slid into the passenger seat and looked at me, worry etched across her face. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I shook my head, managing a faint smile. "I will be," I murmured, gripping the steering wheel tightly. For the next few minutes, we drove in silence, the city lights blurring past. Words felt inadequate. Our emotions, fear, relief, anticipation, and exhaustion, hung thickly in the air. I could feel her tension, her concern, and yet also a quiet pride. We both knew that leaving the party didn't end the night. It had only just begun. Back at home, the tension finally began to ease, but only slightly. The city outside felt distant, muted by the weight of what we carried with us. The folder rested on the kitchen counter, an ominous presence in the otherwise familiar room. My wife and I exchanged a glance, both of us aware of the temptation to open it immediately and the potential consequences if we did. The choice loomed over us like a storm cloud. Dive in now, or wait for the right moment to understand what we had just been entrusted with. She stepped closer, her hand brushing mine. "Whatever's in there," she whispered, "we face it together. But promise me, no rash decisions. We think it through." Her voice wavered slightly, a mixture of fear and unwavering support. I nodded, feeling the gravity of her trust and the warmth that came with it. In that moment, I realized how much stronger we were together, that our bond wasn't just about marriage, but about facing the unknown as a team. For a while, we sat in silence, simply holding each other, letting the adrenaline fade and the reality sink in. The folder remained unopened for now, a symbol of responsibility, danger, and the trust placed upon me. Then, just as I was beginning to breathe a little easier, my phone buzzed. A message from my boss appeared on the screen. "Good. You have it. But this is only the beginning. Meet me tomorrow at the warehouse on 7th Street at dawn. Don't tell anyone. Bring nothing but the folder." The words made my stomach twist. The night wasn't over. The danger, the urgency, the impossible task, it was still unfolding. My wife's hand found mine again, tighter this time, her eyes reflecting both fear and determination. "We'll get through this," she said firmly, her voice steady. I realized then that whatever lay ahead, we weren't just navigating a corporate crisis. We were navigating it as partners, as a team. And even though the stakes had risen higher than either of us could have imagined, that knowledge, her presence, her trust, gave me a flicker of courage in the darkness. The folder on the counter no longer felt like just paper. It was the key to everything: danger, truth, and the test of our bond. And now, there was no turning back. Looking back on that night, I realized I had no choice but to act. The moment my boss's eyes locked on me, the weight of the folder in his hands and the tension in the room left no room for hesitation. It wasn't just about loyalty to my job. It was about responsibility, trust, and the knowledge that inaction could have consequences far greater than I could imagine. Every step I took that night, every decision I made, was driven by the knowledge that the stakes were higher than a single work party, higher even than my own safety. The experience changed everything, not just at work, but at home. In facing that sudden, intense responsibility together, my wife and I discovered a new depth in our relationship. Her fear, her unwavering support, and the way she trusted me despite the danger created a bond stronger than I had ever felt before. For the first time, I saw clearly how much we relied on each other, not just for comfort, but for courage, clarity, and the courage to face the unknown together. Even now, as I sit and think about the events, there's a lingering sense of anticipation. The folder, the boss's cryptic instructions, and the secrets it contains remind me that our night of tension and courage was only the beginning. There's still a mission ahead, unknown consequences waiting, and choices that could reshape everything. And yet, despite the uncertainty, I feel a strange calm, because I know we will face it together. The night taught me that courage isn't just about bold actions. It's about trust, presence, and the willingness to move forward even when every step feels uncertain. Whatever comes next, we're ready. And that thought, more than anything else, is both terrifying and reassuring. The story isn't over, it's just beginning. Thanks for watching. For more videos, please subscribe our channel Awesome Visual Story.